about. We are here to talk about race season. Hallelujah. It is a long time coming for a lot of us. And I am very honored to have Thompson Richmond on the call, Michelle Castro, who is also part of California Tri team, um, who's helping to put on the race. First of all, welcome. And what my intention tonight is just to like poke this bear out of hibernation, because we've all been hibernating. And which is, I did not mean to have this segue, but since Cal Bears is the is the mascot, why don't you first just tell us a little bit about California Triathlon and Cal Tri and your events?
Well, you think you're early in the season, but you're late in the season this year. We're up in Fort Worth the week before, and on the 18th, and then down at Lake Pflugerville in Austin. And before we had ever heard of the phrase pandemic, COVID, lots of new things for vocabulary. I had a chance to take a visit in January of 2020, and we were looking at putting races in all the five, Texas markets as part of a national expansion. Our mission is, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to bring safe, affordable, and accessible racing to the top 20, 25 US markets. And we were lucky enough in that time frame to secure, Fort Worth at Marine Creek Lake, and then work with the producer for the Lake Pflugerville Triathlon, Patrick Height. And that's just been a great relationship. And I'll plug his race. He's got his race on June 27th. So if you can't make the early season race in Austin on the 25th, you can jump in a couple of months later when your fitness is there. So so in terms of the events, we try to have as many events as possible. We're a short course mainly. We have, I'll give you an example. We'll do Fort Worth, Austin, then come back to the East Coast and do Lake Monticello, which is this 14,000 person, 13,000 person gated community, sold out event already, which actually has a 70.3. And then out to Lake Paris, outside Los Angeles, for the first race in California, I believe, that has permits. I think folks are pretty interested in racing. I'm not sure all the races have permits out there, but anyway, so we're excited. We're excited there. And at that Lake Paris race, we have half a dozen race directors. Bob Babbitt from Competitor Group, and then I think Michaela Jones is already on the roster for attendees. So most importantly, what I'm excited about today certainly is the time we spent in Lake Pflugerville and Austin. And we think we'll have pretty close to a sold out event, and we just like to treat people really, really well. So I'm hoping that we can talk about a couple of those things that make our races different.
Yeah, please. And I will say that I logged on the website earlier just to have a gander at the registration. And as of now, it is showing that there are 29 spots left. So it sounds like a sellout is going to be imminent. Is that what you're showing as well?
Yeah, we're going to do that. And athletes, so one of the things is our race is actually, that race is in I'm looking at the clock right now, 17 hours and 17 days, 12 hours and 52 minutes.
If it's 17 hours, I'll see you. I got to get ready.
And so some of the things that are really important, for instance, that race starts at 7, and I'll give you an example. I actually like to start races at 8. But so, hopefully moving forward, where we can, 8, but it's 7. So, our staff and volunteers and folks are showing up at 5. Athletes are showing up at 6. I hope later we get a little bit of chance to talk about this year is going to be different. We've made promises to athletes and said, no matter what the conditions are, this is what we're going to do. And that goes all the way through the end of our race season in Newport Beach in Orange County. So there's conditions there. So 7 o'clock is the race. At 6 o'clock, the athletes are going to come in. And I think from a racing point of view, we sort of try to keep it as normal as possible. So yes, when folks show up, we're asking them to leave the cheering section at home this year. Yes, we're taking temperature testing. Yes, we'll have masks until we get in the water. And there's things that we do at our race, like we've been using for years, a seated rolling swim start. So we think about 60% of our athletes will be first timers or novice, which is awesome. That's why we do what we do. The average age is typically around 30, 32. So a really young group of athletes. We think one of the reasons that happens is that typically when we go out at early bird, and it doesn't matter if this is in Washington, D.C., or like I said, Los Angeles or Lake Pflugerville in Austin, we charge $60 for a sprint and $75 for an Olympic. And if you're 22 and under, it's half of that. And it's always half of that for 22 and under, because that's the future of the sport.
But that rate though, just to not freak people out, but that rate is like, that's the early bird rate. That's not what people would be registering at.
No, eventually it goes up. Like right now it's 120 for the sprint, 150 for the Olympic. But again, it's always 50% off for athletes 22 and below. And then like for relays, we're trying to get new people in. So I never understood the concept of, trying to encourage people to come into the sport and then like gouging them on relays. We actually don't charge anything extra for a relay. So the price for one is the price for three. And so those are some of the things I think you'll notice on that affordable side. Accessible, we're trying to get out to more markets. And then again, from a safety point of view, I can't wait to talk about that, but you're going to see a lot of support, whether it's, I'll give you a great example. If you go to look at our maps, whether it's Fort Worth or Austin, or any of our other races, you already see where the police officers, the volunteers are located. We're down to that, where we like to have the phone number, the email. There's tons of meetings ahead of time. Safety is really, really important. Knock on wood, we've never had a major incident. So that's what we're about, just having a very straightforward, kind of old school grassroots safe race.
So if we could walk through race morning. So if I am a participant, so I would show up at, triathletes, we show up at 4 a.m. But I would show up, get my bike out, assuming 6 o'clock, assuming that I'm doing the tri and not just the 5K. I mean, we can also talk about the variety of events that you have as well. But if I'm doing one of the triathlons, get my bike, I come into transition, you're going to do a quick temperature check on me. Can you talk about the transition racks and spacing? Because I know just, in normal times, that's a notorious problem, is that you're always making out with the person next to you because you're right on top of each other. So how's that going to be handled?
Whatever happens in transition is really none of our business. Okay. I'm always busy. I don't carry what's going on, but anyway. So we will have 3 to a rack. So 2 on one side and 1 on the other. And the experience in the morning is you're going to come in, you're going to get your temperature test. If it's 104 and below, or 103 and below, I guess, then you'll be fine. We'll give you that. Again, it has everything in there. It has your wristband. It has your bike sticker. We don't do helmet stickers. I hope somebody asks me about that later, because being a geek, I love that kind of thing. It has your bib. You have your swim cap. I think we even throw swim caps in there if you're doing the 5K. And so then you'll go to transition, you'll grab your space. And at some point, 15 minutes before the race, we start scooting you out of transition, get you down the water, get you your warm up. And then we seed you in terms of fastest swimmer to slowest swimmer. And then those cones will be 6 feet apart. So if you do a 1 minute it's a 400 for the sprinters go first. There's 400 yards. If you're a minute on the 100 in a pool, you'll be probably at the front. If you swim 3 minutes on the minute, you'll probably be towards the back, and people fill in. And the time doesn't start with a seated rolling swim start until you cross the mat. And then we don't allow the Olympic wave to go. Typically that'll go off at 7:20, but we won't allow that wave to go off in any case until that last sprinter's out of the water. So once the folks who are doing the sprinter on their bike, they're over there, they're transitioning to the bike, they get on the road, they're doing that 12 and a half, 13 mile loop. Then the Olympic athletes are in at the same time now swimming. So we actually don't expect, based on normal swim times of 1,500 meters, 1,640 yards, that those Olympic athletes, even the fastest folks, are going to catch the sprinters, which is nice because if you ever have it flipped around, you're on the bike on that second lap for Olympic and you're like, who are all these people? Who are my new friends? On your left, on your left, on your left. So obviously everybody comes back in a transition after they do 1 or 2 laps, and the run out there is great. I don't even know if we need cones out.
It's hot.
It is. And if you get lost, you are allowed to cheat on the run course, because I don't think there is a way to cheat going around that lake unless you want to get in the water again. So 1 lap for the run, for the sprint, 2 for the Olympic. And when you've come through the finish line, you already have your medal, which I have right here. It's fantastic. There's the Austin medal. It's lovely.
That's cool.
Little bit of Texas going on. And by the way, when you get 4 of those over the next 2 years, you can build yourself a sweet pyramid.
That is so cool.
So that's kind of nice. They're all magnetic, and they kind of snap in, and then you store so we do that. And so if you come out to Los Angeles, shock upon shock, you've got the VW bus, or, if you go down to Newport, that's a sailing community, you've got the beach. We try to do that, and each one works together, which is kind of cool.
That's so cool, Thom. You said a couple of things that I want to touch on. First of all, somebody did ask what time the sprint triathlon starts. It does start at 7 a.m. is the sprint. Thanks, Michelle, for posting the schedule in the chat box. 2 other things that you said that actually kind of sent an alert up my spine was, so packet pickup is on race day?
Yes.
Okay, that's something that is, if you've been in the sport for a while, or even if you're new, that's something that's worth talking about a little bit, because that usually happens, in the days leading up to the event.
Yeah, a lot of times, like somebody will charge some sort of fee to pick your packet up during race morning or something. We're very efficient. Everything is in that bag. The shirt is in the bag in your size. The medal is in the bag. All the things I mentioned are in that bag. So it's very simple. You come up, as long as you know your last name and you have ID, that transaction should take about 30 seconds.
Okay. And my follow-up question to that is, this is not a USAT sanctioned race. So you do not have to have proof of a USA Triathlon membership. So I know that that's also something when people show up to get their packets, they're used to showing a card or their number, and that's not.
No, that's a great question. There's probably 10 different insurance products out there. We don't use the USA Triathlon insurance product. I think our athletes, depending on when they registered, either had that folded into their registration, or they might have paid $2.50. It's a nominal fee. We look at triathlon, again, we look at things very differently. And most runners would not accept a $15 surcharge at the 5K or 10K. We come from that background. So that's a big feature in terms of our athletes.
Yeah.
I would say when we polled our athletes over the last 3 years, we're basically trying to keep money in people's pockets. So if we have 20,000 athletes next year, as an example, we're trying to keep about $300,000 in their pocket, minus whatever the nominal fee we have. So that is a pretty important point. And if you're looking to go to, I don't know, Milwaukee or Cleveland or Milwaukee, some other Midwestern place for some competition, we're not the race to do it at. So that's the insurance component.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. The other point that I wanted to make, and that you said it, but I want to accentuate that a little bit, is that the sprint is going to start first, and you are not going to start the Olympic race until the final sprint swimmer is out of the water, which, for people who are brand new to the sport, or if you consider yourself a slow swimmer, who doesn't, you're not going to get pummeled by the Olympic athletes, I think, is another valuable piece to take home with you tonight.
Yeah, I've been in, you probably have too. I've been in the water with, 2,500, 3,000 athletes, and I'm 6'3", and it's a long, wow. Okay. What was
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And when we studied, over the last 40 years, you start studying, the amount of contact that's actually happens in the water. If you can avoid that, even pre-COVID, we've done that for years. And our athletes really appreciate it. I mean, there's always going to be, like, I'll give you a great example. Maybe there's two folks, like I would race somebody if they were younger, maybe older. We want to race that day. We couldn't because we would be in different waves. In this case, you can basically race each other if you want to do that. But most folks aren't, doing it for that reason. They're trying to get, PR. They're trying to have a good day. They're trying to improve their health and fitness. There aren't too many. I've been at a lot of races. There are rarely a finish line like, oh, wow, that guy got it by the tape. Very rarely happens. So for safety purposes, that's why we do it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Somebody asked approximate lake temperature. Michelle, thank you again. And if you guys are seeing posts from Michelle Castro, she is kind of the co-race director, Thom's right-hand person here locally in Austin. I'm just going to call you Queen at this point, Queen Castro. So she is not just willy-nilly answering questions. She knows a thing or two about the race. But the water temperature you're saying is going to be about 68 degrees. I have a very popular question about the water. How's that hydrilla there this year? That is one of the common concerns from any athlete who has been in that water is the growth of the hydrilla.
My understanding right now, it's pretty good, but we might have to get that mower out and make sure it's really good on race day.
Yeah. That's awesome. Is the with the for those, again, point of reference for people who have raced this event before, are the courses pretty similar to what we're used to? I mean, obviously the run is going to go around the perimeter of that lake. The swim, is that going to start off the beach like it normally does?
It's like almost exact. I mean, there's some of the things that we just talked about in terms of timing and sprint Olympic. Maybe that's a little bit different, but in terms of the route, that route is fantastic. And so the bike route, it's very hard to be creative there, even if we thought we wanted to, is clockwise 13 miles for the sprint, 26 for the Olympic, a little long. And then the run course is an obvious run course. So this is not the course to get creative. We do that, but this isn't that race. So if you've done the Lake Pfluger Triathlon, again, for my good friend Patrick Height on June 27th this year, similar course.
Yeah, awesome. What about aid stations? Are there going to be any aid stations on the bike? And then also, how will that work on the run?
Yeah, typically for short course races, we don't put aid stations on the bike because it's 12 miles, it's 13 miles, 25 miles, that range. And that's something that most athletes can carry their water on, et cetera, and their nutrition. But on the run course, rumor has it does get warm, and we'll have two aid stations on opposite sides of the lake. This year, though, water, ice water, bottled water, but we're not pushing the limits of this. As you guys are very well aware, Ironman Texas was canceled in the same time frame, and larger crowd, bigger different requirements. I mean, we had to do some pretty significant work, a lot of time in order to get this race to happen. And one of those things is pack on your nutrition. There will be water, there will be iced water, but pack your nutrition.
Yes. And we had a question in the chat about kind of advice for first time Olympic distance athletes. And one of the biggest pieces of advice that I'll give you is pace yourself on the bike. And know that you cannot leave it all out there on the bike course. The course and the conditions up at Pflugerville are deceptive because you do have some rolling hills. You think of North Austin as being relatively flat, and it is, but there are some sneaky rollers on that bike course. There are also some pretty gusty winds out there a lot of times. If you've ever ridden Parmer in North Austin, you know that is a fact. So what my recommendation would be is pace yourself conservatively on the bike, particularly if this is your first time doing an Olympic distance race, because that 10K, because it is an exposed course, you're going to want to set yourself up for a good run, because that race is going to be all about the run for you. And then,
and on the bike course, if I may, they just repaved a whole section of that thing. I mean, a large section. But there are places where there's sand that's going to have to be swept out the day before, and the odd pothole that will be down there tamping down and marking. But yeah, it was really nice. They've paved a nice section of that course on the back half of that.
So yeah, that was a question that Brian Rower just asked was, will the bike course be marked, and are there plans to sweep the course? Yeah.
Perfect question.
Yeah, your timing was amazing on that. What time does the 5K start?
It starts all the events. So we have 7 events at the sprint and 7 events at the Olympic. So you're looking at, if I may, triathlon relay, run, bike, run, swim, bike, swim, run, swim, and run the 5K. And so once we push everybody off into the water gently, of course, typically we'll do a gun start on the runners, and then they're basically very close to the same time.
Okay. So
and typically, you know, I'd love to say that our 5Ks and 10Ks are super popular. They're not. They're an option. So typically there's, you know, maybe 5-15 people standing around like, hold on, we'll be right there, you know, get to you just in a second. And they have a great time participating. They get the same medal that everybody else does.
Geez, so I've got 2 thoughts on that. One, if you ever want to win a race, go out and race either the 5K or the 10K and just blow them away. The other thing that sticks out to me is, if you are really reticent about triathlon, or if you've never seen one in person, seen one in action, this might be a great opportunity to volunteer. This might be a great opportunity to perhaps participate, in maybe the duathlon or the 5 or 10K, and just watch how the race day unfolds and how triathlons work. So I love that.
We have a great program too, and which really quickly, we drop a lot of money in communities. So for instance, if you want to volunteer at one of our races, we have a VOGO program. It's been going on for 10 years. It's volunteer one, get one. So you can race another one of our races. So you can volunteer this year and race next year for free. If you have a larger group, we drop a lot of money with different charitable groups. You know, if you have 10 people, we'll actually pay $50 per person in the morning. And so some, college groups or charity groups are taking, $1,000, $1,500 away in a morning. It's a lot easier to go out and do that than it is to bake cookies.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of the volunteer and the clinics, like all of the support leading up to the race, on the 17th of April, so not this weekend, but next weekend, you are hosting your second clinic up at Lake Pflugerville. What happens there? Are people going to be able to get in the water, get on the bike? What was the clinic going to look like?
You have to bring everything you'd want to bring, for the race. So everything. So the list, right? So all your swim stuff, your bike stuff, your run stuff, you bring it. We start off with the bike. We do a course preview so that folks that, day before, the week before, 8 days prior, they can see the course. We come back, we do a full transition clinic, how to do transition, how to set up your area. We'll do a run. And then the last thing typically we do is we get into the water. And so we talk about the seated rolling swim start, sighting, position in the water, breathing, rotation, et cetera, et cetera. And the folks who leave that free 3-hour clinic put on by California Triathlon, they are typically much better prepared. So give you an example, and I love to give this example with bikes. If you go and look at the rule book on bicycles, I think the official rule book is 65 pages and 20,000 words. And we could put a link on that to our website and say, you know, well, the rule book's there, so just go for it. I'm an engineer. I can't understand it. And so when we talk about bikes, we say, well, it has to have two wheels. It could be pretty much any bike except for recumbent or a fixie and a brake on the front and back. We're good. And that saves people a lot of trouble. So when we talk about like bike conduct, obviously there's a bike, there's a helmet, there's ride to the right, there's pass on the left, there's no drafting, there's no blocking. And I like to use the example, if you'll allow me, what happens if somebody's blocking me? I should never pass to the right. No. I should never cross the double yellow line. No. What do? Well, the first time you say on your left, and the second time you say on your left, and then the third time you say something different than on your left. And I leave that to what that is, but I think people get the point. And so that's part of that communication that gets people race ready. My biggest challenge, honestly, as a race director is too much information, not enough information, too frequently, not frequently enough. And I will tell you that 95% of the emails that we get are information that's just there. You know, what are the course maps? It's like, it's right there. So I think I've talked to my colleagues in other industries, and you probably know the same thing. And it's like, some folks like that information cut up into bite-sized pieces, and other folks don't. So it's really that balance of how much communication.
Yeah. And I think for people, when it's your first time, and it's all of our first time for racing in a long time, the more information, the better, which again is why I'm so grateful that you guys have taken the time to actually talk to us in person, because it's been a while, and a lot of people are familiar with the triathlon up at Lake Pflugerville, whether it's the one that traditionally happens in June, or we've raced the similar course perhaps with like Jack's Generic Tri, which is a similar course. So it is always great to get the little nuances that we should be thinking about, and as it pertains to each individual race. Along with that question, I know that you've talked about, you have a very generous volunteer to athlete ratio. There are big race companies that a lot of people get tattooed on various body parts that have a very wide swath of volunteer to athlete ratio. You guys, you almost get your own private concierge, don't you?
Oh, I wish. Right now we're a little behind in Austin in particular, but yeah, you know, we have so many beginners, and it's a personal thing. My guess is I've been in touch with 80% of the athletes that have registered personally on an email, on like not email, phone call. Welcome to the race. Can I answer your questions? What can I help you with? I don't know if the folks who are on this call, Michelle, Brian, I don't know, possible. Have I reached out to you at this point? Are you registered, and have I reached out to you? I don't know. I statistically, I should have. So we know we have beginners, and we want to answer their questions. We want to make sure they're safe. And I will say this relative to like a community event. It is a community event. It's very important, but I don't think there's a race we have this year that doesn't have participation from less than 16 states. So the list of people coming in are from New York and Illinois and California, and I mean, all over the country. We have a good brand, and people want to come in and do our races. And we're really excited about, you know, we posted the state list from the place that they come from. And we like to show off, you know, whether it's Austin or Lake Pflugerville, we like to show off the places that we play.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Had a question earlier in the chat box, so I'll just repeat it for people who aren't monitoring the chat. What about headphones and AirPods?
Oh, that is excellent. That is an excellent question. That is, I think, number 2 or 3 on the FAQ. No, they're very bad. No,
Even for the
Look,
5K and 10K, like if you're
even
just
for
doing the
the
standalone.
even for the 5K, and the reason I say this is certainly for the bike, you have to be, I won't even get into insurance purposes, but you have to be cognizant of what's going on around you, and you just can't when you're jamming. And so if somebody's coming up on you and saying on your left, and you've got your tunes in, that doesn't work. If there's a police officer giving you instruction, that doesn't work. So we just kind of, no, just leave them at home. I mean, if you come out of transition with the headphones, we're probably going to send you back in and put those away.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'll go ahead and open it up. People can either drop questions in the chat that maybe they haven't seen an answer to or heard an answer to, or if you'd like to just take yourself off mute, perhaps you have a more customized question that you'd like to ask Thom. If not, I'll keep firing questions. Oh, wetsuit recommended. That's a dang good question.
I'm going to jump into it. And
Yeah.
since it's a shameless plug for earlier, Blue 70 is our partner, and they provide all of our swim caps. So go to Blue 70 and they'll take care of you. Honest recommendations. This is wetsuit legal. If I'm doing the Olympic, if I'm really racing, this is me on the Olympic, of course. If I'm doing the sprint, a 400-yard swim, there's no way that I'm going to grin and bear it for 400 yards because I don't want to waste the time taking that suit off. But you'll get on 1,600 yards, you're going to get X number of seconds per 100, and that's going to probably be worth it. So with that stated, I do know people that even in an 80-degree pool, they're cold, or they have really bad form and they need that wetsuit for buoyancy and position. Those are really good reasons to get that wetsuit. So will there be people there without wetsuits? Bunches of them. It's just everybody sort of have to have their own strategy when it comes to that. Did I answer that one right, Carrie?
Yeah, I would completely concur. I think if you are fearful of the swim, regardless of distance, whether it's the sprint or the Olympic, if you are so fearful of the swim that it soothes you and makes you more confident to put a wetsuit on, take the extra couple minutes to do it. It's so worth the investment of your energy, because you're going to want that energy later. But you're right. In general, I would say if I was doing the sprint and I have a little bit of experience behind me, I'm just going to grin and bear it and know that the endorphins are going to pull me through and not wear a wetsuit. But if I was doing the Olympic, I would absolutely wear a wetsuit. Swim skins. Yes, I would imagine swim skins are allowed as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, those are popular. And since we're kind of on the subject of that, what about are you seeing people wearing the swim shorts? I think they call them the Sims shorts. So basically, like your buoyant diaper pants.
Yeah, I mean we do, but it's one of those things where I don't think that much. Like I'll give you a great example on drafting. Great example. Like we obviously do not encourage drafting, and there's rules about that. But what I have found is I've been in races in a lot of places. In fact, there's a very famous race in Texas that had so many people drafting they had to pull the referees off the course. So we kind of have an honor system with our group, and since we're not giving away gold medals, since we're not giving away cash prizes, like if you cheat, it's kind of on you, and you have to know that. We also, like when we thought about the drafting mainly is the one culprit, we thought about, well, if you're going to worry about all kinds of cheating, then I'm going to have to give Sarah and Michelle and Brian, I'm gonna have to give them drug tests as well, because that's another form of cheating. And when you're doing early bird at $60 and for a sprint and $75 for an Olympic, there's no budget for that. So we've really felt like that there's been there are no Olympic qualifying slots. There's no, if you cheat, I'm not sure why you would do that. I know there's people who do that, but you kind of leave that to you. if that makes sense.
Definitely. Sarah, I know you had a question. It's so funny. I'm like, ooh, Sarah has her hand raised. It's so cute.
I've been programmed for the last year. First of all, this is my first sprint triathlon after losing almost 100 pounds. I'm very excited to race. It's a huge thing that's been on my bucket list for a long time. And I've been like on my bike and swimming and all that good stuff. I have experienced something that is really hard for me, and it's kind of weird emotionally, is when I'm transitioning off the bike and I start to run. I feel like the total jelly legs and that I'm just going to fall down. And it's kind of like spinning the psychological and the physiological. Is there any advice as to like maybe clenching or stretching or something that like makes that transition a little better?
Can I answer this one?
Please, yes.
I'm actually going to send and post for you. We just had a Craig Alexander, I guess about 6 weeks ago. He was pretty good back in the day on on a podcast talking specifically about doing a brick, which is that bike run. And typically it's about 7 to 10 minutes where you've got those jelly legs. And a lot of folks, especially if they had a little bit, I can physiologically tell you why that's happening. But in terms of time, you just kind of have to give yourself that first mile where you're just taking it easy and, lose a 30 seconds or a minute in that first mile. Let your different muscle groups recover. And the only other thing I'd say to that is I hated it the first time I had that happen. I was at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And I had biked on some days and run on other days. And so I said, let's go do a brick. I'm like, sure. And same thing, right? And so it was just a lot of practice. And once you start practicing it, then it's manageable. It never goes away fully, but I would highly recommend, even if you're spinning or biking, even that mile of practicing that after you get off the bike, put the shoes on, is very valuable. That's my advice on that. Yes, it's real. Yes, you can practice it. And if you're somebody like an Alistair Brownlee who can run a 10K at 28 and change, and his impacted 10K is like 29 and change, so he's got like a 2 or 3% difference. One of the things we like to test early season, maybe you'll do this later this year, is we'll go out and do a 12-mile bike, a 5K, and then a few days later, just do a standalone 5K, kind of compare the times. And if it's less than 10%, you're doing awesome. So, that kind of thing. Good question.
That's a great question. And congratulations. This is not a personal podcast night, but I lost about 60, 70 pounds several years ago. And I completely celebrate you. And I think that you're going to, and I'll tell you this, I don't know that any triathlete doesn't get the jelly legs when they start running, and they're just like, what did I do to myself? But I would also maybe just encourage you to take sips of water just to try to make sure that you're hydrated enough for that run, and then allow your heart rate to come down a little bit before you start to run because once you get off that bike, your blood is shunted to the muscles that have just been trying to do all of this work. So you need to kind of bring your heart rate down a little bit, and again, set yourself up for a good run. I wouldn't gulp a bunch of water because it'll probably cause some GI distress, but absolutely take a few sips of water in there.
Sarah, I'm bringing your medals, Sarah. Bringing it. It's right here.
Oh, that's so great. Anybody else have a question that you'd like to ask? Just kind of raise your hand and I can pull you off mute.
I want to hear from Brian. I haven't heard anything. He's just taking it all in. He won't say a word. Come on.
Come on. I've asked a couple chat questions and they answered. You've been rocking it. You've been killing it. I asked the temperature, water temp. You nailed it. I asked about the marking on the course. You nailed it. The debris. I'm fortunate. I get to ride in the area. It's my backyard. So I went out and rode the course, and then I got back home, and then I ran from my house. So I did do a little run, but I have ran around Lake Pflugerville, and I liked your comments. You can cheat on the run if you swim. That track is nice. It's really close to the water, and it's wide enough, and it's got just a little bit of variation, but and like you said, the bike course got some chip seal out there, and there's a couple bad spots, but I like the change in elevation. That'll make it challenging for sure for a lot. It's not just flat. So I'm excited about this race. I'm glad you guys are excited. I like hearing this.
Yeah.
My memory on where the sorry to interrupt, Carrie. My memory on where the bad the bad pavement is Hottie, right? Right. So Brian, when you get the H it right, and I think, how do I remember it? I'm like, oh, that's not a Hottie. That's for sure. Right. So that's the only way I remember that, because we have all these different courses, and I'm like, that's no Hottie.
Yeah. I think the one, and I'm sure you guys will have police out there, but you come up and you make that right, and it's a little bit busy, and then you make a left. So I'm sure you guys will have some folks out there helping out with traffic. I think that's the only safety issue, I kind of saw when you came down Joel Bowles or Jesse Bowles, and you make that left. I mean, I think that's another, because you got so much speed, you're coming down that hill, and you want to kind of keep it, but you got to watch out for traffic. So it'll be interesting to see how that works.
And Brian, I don't know if you heard it earlier, but we actually put the locations of the police officers on the sprint map. And so you can answer that question.
Wow.
So
I'm going to check it out now.
Good.
So impressive.
Thank
you, Brian. Actually, I was going to ask you how the course was looking, and to see if the roads were in good shape. The other thing on the run too, I would encourage people to wear a visor or a hat, especially if it is hot and sunny that day. You'll thank yourself. You'll be able to, if nothing else, douse it with some cold water, dump water on your head. If you're getting a little overheated, you could always put ice in your cap as well. That's another great way to kind of just sort of cool your pulses if you do find yourself in a situation where you are feeling a little overheated in that moment. So yeah, definitely wear some shade. There's great, there's the map. Michelle just posted the map up there on the before we wrap. I wanted to remind you of a few things. First of all, registration is open, but it's pretty imminent that there's going to be a sellout within the next couple of days. So do not hesitate and I'm basically telling this to myself at this point, but don't hesitate. If you're on the fence, there is an event for you out there. If nothing else, if you are still reticent, but you want to check it out, please volunteer. I posted in the chat, actually Michelle posted in the chat. If you are a member of Austin Tri Club, we have a special link and a special code. So if you'd like to volunteer on behalf of Austin Tri Club, we get $50 for every volunteer that we provide. And so that would be incredibly generous if you're able to do that and don't want to race. The other announcement is just a reminder about the free 3-hour clinic on Saturday, April 17th. There is a registration form on their website, on the race website, but it is a no-cost event. I think they just want a head count, a safe head
count, communicate, and insurance.
Yes. Am I missing anything, Thom or Michelle?
You are. I'm saving the big one. I'm saving it. I had to have the closer. So if you registered, this race is on April 25th. So if you registered by March 25th, you have your name on the back of the shirt.
Oh, that's cool.
So everybody who's participating gets their name on the shirt, and for everybody that registered on March 26th, too bad you don't get your I sorry about that. We had to put the orders in, but we typically try to customize and do that kind of thing. Make a little extra special. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks guys so much for taking time. I really, really appreciate it. And Carrie, thank you. And
thank you.
Austin Tri Club, thank you. And this will be the first year of many.
Yeah, and if anybody has any additional questions that they maybe didn't think to ask or feel comfortable asking, you can always reach out to us at Austin Tri Club. You can reach out directly to me. My email address with the club is NTP. N as in Nancy, TP. It stands for New Triathlete Program. NTP at austintriclub.org. So feel free to send me a personal email if you have any specific triathlon related questions, and I'll make sure that I get those answered for you. So thank you guys very, very much. I will be sharing this recording with the club in an email here in the next couple of days, but look forward to it. Look forward to getting back on that race course. I cannot wait.